I've been it's been rough lately to get a hold of you.
Okay. Well, life is rough sometimes.
But I did get the thing figured out, so I'm ready to do it if you're ready.
Yeah. Right now?
Yes, sir. I got it taping.
Okay. Great. This is Bruce Glover. You're a fabulous actor.
Yes, he is. A lot of you guys might know him from Diamonds Are Forever is one of his most known films, and of course Ghost World, which he told me not to mention.
Yeah, why mention piddly little things? Why don't you mention things like the Walking Tall films, which I did 3 of them, but the first one is a brilliant film. And then Hard Times, which is a terrific film with Charlie Bronson and Jimmy Coburn, and really fabulous piece of work. You know, some of these other films, actors sometimes just have to pay the rent and or satisfy somebody as a favor, which that film you just mentioned was a favor to my son to do it for a friend of his rather than my wanting to do the role and whatever it was. But you know, there are sometimes tiny little films you can do a terrific piece of work on them. But in reality, everyone who is interested in becoming an actor has to look at themselves and see what they're willing to pay to do it and what do they have to offer. And like I came into acting accidentally. I had my first job when I was 6 years old delivering groceries because it was a Depression area, and any job that you could get, you took. I made 60 cents a week delivering groceries 6 days a week, and that was big money for a 6-year-old kid. And you know, I always had a job. I delivered groceries. I dug graves. I sold magazines door to door. I worked for many years at a newsstand in a loop in Chicago. And in the long run, work is something that life is, and so is acting. Acting demands that you have the ability to do the work and also to sustain yourself through, you know, there are lots of people that are stupid who are involved with the film industry, and you have to protect yourself from them and sometimes survive them and sometimes overcome them and do things that are at a strong opportunity here. A lot of times you are, you know, the director is an idiot, and most directors are okay or idiot to okay. And sometimes you actually run into a good director. You know, like you know, when you're working the Bond film, the director was great, and he let me create anything I wanted to. He would just say, "All right, show me," and I would show him, and then he'd call over the Aussie DP and say, "Now show him," and I'd show him, and the Aussie would always go, "Yep." Now that film involved 2 killers who are trying to kill Sean Connery all the way through the film, and the interesting thing about the film, and especially interesting for the time, and this was Tom Mankiewicz's addition to the film, was that they were gay. And in those days, gay was just, you didn't dare say that. There were a lot of actors who looked like gay, but they were never totally identified. Well, these 2 guys were. And my wife was a ballet dancer, so we had gay ballet friends of hers and Broadway dancer friends of hers around all the time. But when I saw the script, I saw that I could do something that was very funny with it. And it was a terrific opportunity. And but I didn't want to. I didn't want to do the cliche gay thing, like, oh, if you two get divorced, I don't know which one you're going to marry, or I'm going to marry, which was actually a statement by one of my wife's friends one time, and I didn't want to come across that way. But the director, Guy Hamilton, who is passed on now, but he was terrific, a smart man. And he said, is there anything I can do for you that would be helpful? And I said, yes, Guy, don't tell me which of the two characters I'm playing. Because I didn't want to be thinking of the lines, whichever character I was going to be playing. Thinking of the lines is something that too many actors do and get into like a trap with, where they get it all down pat. Well, I don't want everything down pat as an actor. I like the possibility of what's going to happen to me when I'm saying these lines. What things are going to happen with the other actor? What things are going to happen on the set? What if a big bird flies by and lands on my head? Is that going to be interesting in the scene? Whatever happens, I want to have happen so that I can respond to it. Sometimes you get an actor that is doing things that are interesting, and you do respond to it. Sometimes you get people that are overacting, overly precise, and really boring to look at. So you look for that big bird to come landing on your head instead. Art is an interesting thing, in that a lot of people try to do art, and they try to do it perfectly. Well, art is imperfect. That's what art is. It's something that you go through a learning process with. Now, in my early days as a kid in Chicago, being an actor was something that you didn't dare ever say you were going to be. Only if you said you're going to be an actor, no, I had no idea what I was going to become an actor. I had an instinct for it. And instinct is partly what every person should try to find in themselves. If you have an instinct for acting, great. If you don't try to become an actor. See if you have an instinct for it. If you do, great. If you don't try it. Some people have an instinct for something and they don't realize what it is. Well, I didn't know I had an instinct for acting, but when I was a little kid, I remember going to movies with my mother. I think I was like 3 years old when I saw Franklin Delano Roosevelt struggling to get to a microphone with his polio. And I was fascinated by it. And I started trying to put my body into his polio body and trying to understand what it was what it would be like to be like that. And I showed my mother, and remember my mother said, oh, do you love your president? And I'm like 3 years old, and I'm like, yeah. I didn't love the president. I loved the idea of exploring what it felt like to be like that. That's what a good actor does, is he or she explore the situation of the person who tries to experience it. Now, that's what the term experience is very important. If you're not experiencing something, whatever you're doing, whether it's acting or growing tulips, the experience you're having is what you are doing it for. The joyful experience is something that, even though sometimes it's hard, the experience of it is what you're there for. That's what life is for, experiencing of it. Now, as a little kid, I didn't think I was going to be an actor, but I remember there was a church thing. My father forced me to go to church constantly, and a scary thing, going to church and finding out you're going to hell when you're 4 years old. But I was in a pageant where Joseph and Mary were supposed to go from door to door to find a place where Jesus could be born, and I was the last kid in the line up on the church altar. And they got to me, and I was 3 years old with a big barrel chest, I guess, for that age. And I had one line. It was "No room at the inn." And when they got to me, I said, "No room at the inn." And the whole church burst into laughter. And I thought, wow, that's great. So I said it again, and they laughed more. And I said it again, and I said it again. And finally the minister came and chased me all over the altar, finally caught me. Even though I was caught, I kept yelling, no room at the end, and to the laughter. So I knew I had an instinct for laughter. An instinct for understanding what the person is, but an instinct for laughter is important. So I like making my mother laugh, you know, it's a depression area. So whatever you could do. Now, but in that time, I also had some other skills. One of my other skills, I was a terrific little athlete, and I became a better athlete, and I played football, and I wrestled, and I was on a city championship team in Chicago in 1949, Soldiers Field. We were the champion of the whole city, and I was on that field. You know, I also had a scholarship to go to Colorado College, but then they found out something weird about me. A couple courses, and they said, no, you have to go to another school to prove that you can do college level work. Well, in my early days, I had flunked first grade grammar school, and because they discovered I couldn't read, I had done a tricky thing where I just saw the picture and heard somebody else say it and memorized it. And sometime later, maybe I won't even get to it, but I'll talk to you about it. Sometimes there's something in an individual. So they gave me an IQ test, and for years, I wasn't sure if I wasn't stupid or weird, but the teachers knew I was bright, really bright. But I didn't know it until a class, I think around sixth grade, the teacher took us into the library and said, class, all of you can go to wall 1, 2, and 3, and Bruce and Marlene can go to wall 4. Well, that's all the college little class. And I just realized, wait a minute, I'm not dumber than everyone else. I'm smarter. And I immediately took Homer's The Iliad out, and the teachers were very impressed. The first book I took out of the library was Homer's The Iliad. The Iliad. We're all on our own Iliad, and as am I, and as are you. All of you are on your journey to wherever you have to get to. But getting to the right place depends on discovering in yourself what you have an instinct for. Now, I did have an instinct for football, and I also was an artist, and I started doing paintings and stuff. One of the first drawings I remember doing was when I was still under the age of 5, cold winter. If you had to go pee-pee, you had to go all the way upstairs. We were in a second-story apartment, and you had to take off all those clothes so you could do your job. And one time I seen a man taking pee-pee on the side of my house, and I thought, why go all the way up there? So as a little kid, I went over to the same spot where that man went, and I did my job. And then later, when I got upstairs, I found a family encyclopedia, and I wish I could find it now. If any of you have this encyclopedia, please let me know. I did a drawing in this encyclopedia of a big happy house with a big smiling face and standing with a big penis peeing, and he was very happy about it. So that was my first artwork. But I now, one of the things I'm doing right now is I'm working on an art book, and I've sold paintings, and I will sell more paintings, but I'm also a writer and all that stuff. All of us have skills that we don't even know we have that pop out on weird times. Suddenly you realize, I'm a singer, and I can do that, or you realize that you can dance, and I can do all of those things, but I'm bragging too much. No, I'm not. Go ahead, brag. So, but I was playing football at this junior college in all conference both years in a row, and then suddenly I got drafted for the Korean War because I flunked English, and that got me drafted for the Korean War. And I was there the last 6 months of the war, and then when the war stopped and they stopped shooting at us, the Army let the University of California come over there and give courses, and I picked up 9 hours of college credits when I was in Seoul, Korea, And one of the courses I took was English to find out that if I could pass English and get my football scholarship. So it turns out that, the teacher pulled me aside at the end. He said, Bruce, I don't know what it is about you, but there's something weird that's going on with you. But if I went by your grammar scores, I would have to flunk you again. I went, really? And he said, yeah, but you write beautifully. Well, I had written 3 short stories for him. He had assigned those to the class. He said, and they're terrific, and you're advanced. And he said, so I'm going to forget your grammar scores and pass you. Well, it was at a time like that, way back then, nobody knew there was a thing called dyslexia. Well, apparently I'm a dyslexic. And I just read something recently saying, well, dyslexics are people that have trouble with reading. Well, no, they don't. Dyslexics have trouble doing things that they find boring. If you're a smart dyslexic, you just want to do it. And that's the way I teach acting. I tell people, don't learn to act. Just do it. That's what I did. Well, kind of. I used to work out with weights and stuff, and a good buddy of mine said, Bruce, you got a good build on you. You ought to go down there and pose at the Art Institute for the art classes. In those days, we had to talk like that if you were a tough guy in Chicago. And I posed at the Art Institute, and a beautiful woman posing across the room, totally naked, came up to me and said, Bruce, how would you like to? And my mind went, how do I like to? And she said, be a gorilla. I thought, be a gorilla? It's just some weird sex act they're doing in Chicago now. Turned out that she was a stripper, and she needed a guy strong enough to wear a 100-pound ape suit and toss her around for 15 minutes in a burlesque act. And so I thought that sounded like a dignified thing to do. Plus, it's a lot of money, and for those days. And so I did that act, and we were in Tampa Bay, Florida, and a magician who was in the dressing room was having fun, and he came with his magic wand, and he poked me on the shoulder and poked me on the forehead and poked me on the other shoulder and said, Bruce, you are an actor. I said, what do you mean? He said, you make that gorilla so believable, you ought to try acting. Well, that was my first indication from anyone that I should be acting, although I'd always been acting, didn't know I was. And a guy told me, who was working in a club as a singer, later was on Broadway, we stayed in touch, and he said, yeah, you ought to go to acting classes in New York. And I went, acting classes? There are classes for acting? He said, yeah. And to this day, I don't believe in classes in acting. Even though I went to Northwestern and got a degree, a Bachelor of Science in Speech, and since then I can't stop talking. But Bachelor of Science in Speech. So, but I also had psychology, and I did take Shakespeare. So when you're doing Shakespeare, you can't do it with D's, M's, and those accents. So I lost my D's, M's, and those accents. But basically, what Northwestern, where I got my Bachelor of Science degree, let me know where I had to go next. I had to go to... So anyway, when I came back from Korea, I had another wonderful thing happen to me. I got malaria. And these are the weird things in your life that may cause you to discover who and what you really are. And the malaria meant I couldn't pick up my football scholarship, even though I passed English finally. And I went back to that college where I played football to heal up so I could say, okay, I'm ready to play football again. I saw a play being advertised, audition, so I thought I should try that out. I went to the audition, and the teacher at the college said, yeah, come back for the callbacks. Well, something in me got scared of this idea of acting, and I didn't go back to the callbacks. But a couple of days after the callbacks, that teacher's coming up the flight of stairs, sees me, and yells, where were you? I said, well, I got busy, and he said, I want you to play the lead. I went, oh, okay. So I played the lead in the play, and I was terrific, and I got terrific reviews and everything. I never had an acting class. I never even read a book on acting. Just do it is my approach to acting, even though I've taught acting, and I will teach certain things to people. And I still do online acting classes where if somebody really is interested in, they could call me at 310-391-4154. Leave a clear message, and I'll call you back. But, so there I was, and then I went to a summer stock company where I heard that they had casting, and I didn't get paid. The paid actors were, and I lived out of my car and slept on a porch of the theater. But I did the lead every week. And from then I went back to college. Then I finally went to Northwestern and I took acting classes. But I felt like I knew more than the actors in the classes, and I became kind of like a person that people would ask advice of. And I remember there was this young guy, and he said, "Come and watch my freshman class audition." I did, and he asked me afterwards whether. And I remember there were like 500 girls lined up because he was gorgeous, and he said, "Let me get rid of them," and he got rid of them, and we walked around the campus, and he said, "What should I do?" I said, "What do you want to do?" And he said, "I want to be a star." And I said, "Well, Warren," I said, "Warren Beatty." I said, "Yeah, you've got all you need to be a star. Go to New York." I remember telling that story to him again, and he got mad at me because one of his sons was here, and he said, "I didn't say I wanted to be a star." I said, "Yes, you did." As you are. So there, people have the quality sometimes to be something, and that's all I need to do is do it. Don't study it so much as do it. Yeah, study is fine. I do teach, and, study is fine. But in the long run, lean back and do what you want to do. So when Diamonds Are Forever, the James Bond film, I had asked the director not to tell me which character I was going to play. There I was out on getting my makeup and wardrobe and stuff, and I still didn't know what character I was going to play. And there were like 250 people running around in the desert getting ready to shoot the first scenes, and I might be shooting with Sean Connery, and I still didn't know what character I was going to play. And I panicked for a minute, and I thought, Jesus, you're going to be terrible. They'll fire you and get a good actor. And then I said, wait a minute, calm down, talk to your acting teacher, me, and I talked to me, and he said, get in touch with the world. So I started breathing in the air and started looking at the sky and started doing things, and finally I took in a breath of early morning nice, clean desert air, and I felt good, and I felt great. I feel great. This is great. And then I said, well, so there's my partner over there, and we're gay. And I looked at that guy, and he had these snaggly mustache and weird teeth, and I said, gay people kiss. And I looked at him, and I thought, I don't want to kiss this guy. If I don't want to kiss this guy, I don't want to do anything else that gay people do. So what about that guy? He's funny. I love looking at him. He's like a big, giant toy. Well, no, he's not a gay partner. He's my toy. From now on, I just punch him in the corner, and he's my toy. I just make him do what I want him to do. So that was a relationship between me and Potter Smith, who was terrific. He was just a natural musician hearing music all the time. And then somebody came over to him and said, pick out your scorpion. And suddenly I realized I was Mr. Wint, the guy who had to be holding the scorpion. I thought, I don't want to be holding a scorpion. And I go, wait a minute. You're going to be the only guy with a scorpion on the set. You big show-off actor, you've got a scorpion and nobody else does. So there's the character. He's my toy, and I've got a trick. So that was the character, and it came off terrifically, and it's funny. And Guy Hamilton listened to every idea I had. Every idea I had was to get a laugh. The final laugh where Sean rudely shoves a yee-haw at my ho-ho, and gives my character decides it's the last great sexual pleasure of his life. Oh wow! Gets the biggest laugh in any Bond film ever, and so Roger Moore even said that. So, but everything was calculated on my point. People don't realize that I've done it, and I should have gotten an Academy Award for that, but they didn't know how great I was back in those days. So, so if anyone wants to send me an Academy Award, do it. That'd be great. Acting is an incredible thing. My son Crispin and I did a film of our own. The two of us. He wrote a script. I wrote on it. We argued enough, and then we finally shot it in the Czech Republic, where he has a 20-acre terrific estate. And the film is yet to come out. It's called right now the title isn't being revealed. It's called a Crispin Hellion Glover Untitled Project. So he's still doing some music work on it, and someday soon it will come out, and you can give me my Academy Award on that. But other films that I've done, like the Walking Tall films were brilliant. No, one of them was brilliant. The first Walking Tall were Buford Pusser, who was a famous sheriff in Tennessee, who took on the mafia and destroyed them, and then they killed his wife and then threatened to kill him for a long time. He was there on the set, and Buford and I became good friends. And he was there through the whole filming. And then at some point, they decided that Buford should play himself in the sequel. And so I did Buford's screen test at Paramount, and they actually built 3 sets. And I played 3 characters in it. 2 of them, my deputy I played in the movie with Buford, and then I did another guy who was a smuggler or something. And when Buford arrived on the set, and again, we'd been friends and stuff, and he came up to me and went, I'm scared to death. This is a man who took on the whole mafia. I said, well, that's a good place to start, Buford. And he said, well, what am I going to do? I don't know anything about acting. I said, Buford, do you remember when you were on patrol in your car and you see a car and you notice the license plate and you call in the license plate to see if there was anything on the car, and then when you decided to stop the car, you turned on your lights and see how they reacted. And when they stopped, you'd park your car behind it 2 feet out to protect you from oncoming traffic. And when you approached the back of the car, you'd look through the windows to see if there was anyone else in the car, and then you'd look over his shoulder, see if he had a gun or anything. And then when he got out, you'd look at his hands and make sure he didn't have a weapon. And then when you talked to him, you'd look at his face to see how he was responding, and you'd listen to what he said. And he says, yeah, I do all those things. And I said, oh, well, that's how you act. He went, oh, I see. I got it. And he did. And that's a good acting lesson. You have to notice everything that's there and let it affect you. Buford was going to be terrific. The screen test was amazing. I wish that people would show it now. But people, with the sequels, they went into, people wanted to sell a lot of clubs, which Buford and I used to laugh about. He didn't like the club idea. And guns with his names on it. These were all things that were not Buford. Buford was a man who wanted to protect his family and his territory. And the first, the films that came out afterwards were making Buford into a bully. Now, when Buford and I last saw each other, my boy was up at a Boy Scout camp, and Buford was all family, and I said, Buford, you don't need me for your last couple lines here. He said, no, you go ahead. I've got to, you go up and be with your boy. And I went, great. And I reached up and goosed him. He was sitting on top of a truck, and he said, "I'll get you when you get to Tennessee." And we both laughed, and I left and expecting to see Buford in Tennessee, and then he was murdered. And he just passed it off as a traffic accident. His daughter Dwana told me the real story, and in tears and all. You know, I had to give her a paper bag to breathe into so she could finish her story. And she told me how two trucks, that truck trailer had driven him off the road, and she had pulled him out from underneath the wrecked truck, and his head lying in her lap, looking up at her and saying, "Dwana, Dwana, Dwana," and died. And the two truckers that had driven him off were gone now, and she could see all the skid marks that caused Buford to be wrecked, but they didn't want to deal with that. And unfortunately, now Dwana has died too. So people in films can sometimes have good motives, and they had good motives for the first film, but the second and third film, you had entirely different people, entirely different cast. And I was still there because I needed to, you know, I had a contract and I needed the money to pay my rent and, my mortgage and all that stuff. So it sometimes is a very disturbing business, but you can't walk around being disturbed. You have to forget the bummers that have happened and move on to the next thing and try to handle what is there next. And life is full of casualties, and sometimes you're casualty, but then heal up, stand up, and do it again. Don't be afraid. Learn as much as you can about anything you decide you can do, and do it. You know, just enjoy it. But if any of you want to, you know, be dumb enough to try to get into acting, you can call me and I'll give you some advice. And you can, you know, pay for private lessons over the phone and shooting yourself with your smartphone, and give you monologues to work on. And the only thing I can advise people to do right now is, get a demo of 2, 3, 4 minutes at most of you doing some acting, and do it the right way. But most people just do it the wrong way, and they act too much instead of becoming real. What you want to become is real. Great directors find reality in people who have never acted before. Potter Smith in Diamonds Are Forever had never acted before. He just was real. He was interesting to look at. And that helped me as an actor. Boy, that was an advantage. He didn't realize how great an advantage he was. He didn't know. But he was a bass player with Thelonious Monk, and that's how he got into film. But great directors find amazing talent. My son Chris, in our films that we did, found a lot of people that had never acted before, and yet they're significant in the film. Roman Polanski did in our film, in Chinatown. There was a girl who had never acted before, and he cast her as a secretary, and she was wonderful. Brought a sense of reality to it that no actor could have been, because her nervousness about being an actor worked as her nervousness as a secretary. She was terrific. Terrific directors like Guy Hamilton picking Potter Smith, having seen him play bass fiddle with Thelonious Monk, said, "Well, that could be one of the guys." And thank you, Guy, for picking Potter Smith. I thought when we had the audition, I thought he picked me, and Potter Smith was auditioning. I was actually auditioning for against a guy that was going to be Potter Smith if they didn't pick me. And I was telling them, because I knew the guy was telling me what a terrific actor he was. Luckily, they didn't listen to me. They cast me instead.
Did
it's
you?
a fun. Go ahead, yeah.
Oh, I was gonna say, did you ever have a part that you really hated playing?
You know what? I love all parts, no matter how bad they are. You learn something doing them, and so people say, "What's your favorite thing?" I say all of them. You know, every opportunity to act is an opportunity, and sometimes in the thing, you know, like there was a film called Hunter's Blood where I played a character called One Eye, and the character that I had auditioned for was to be the lead of this gang of crazy killers, and Joe Namath had come in and saw me, and he got me out of the room, and he thought I was too small to have a fight scene with. So they called me back in and said, "We're taking you out of that part, and you're going to do another part." So I didn't get to play the leader of the gang. They hired a guy that was bigger than I was to fight with Joe Namath. But I got to do this character named One Eye, and I managed to do a whole lot of crazy things with that character. I remember they had a sequence where it was a nice shot on the side of a hill, and I had to come down this hill and then come down to just in front of a fallen log, and I had to crawl under the fallen log and then crawl towards the body of Purdy, one of my gang members. And when I got to where Purdy was, and I found out his whole head had been blown apart. Now they just described the action that I crawled down the hill, crawled under the log, went to the place where Purdy was, picked up his hand, and just cried. And they said, "Okay, action." And this was a director who had never directed before, and I didn't bother talking about it beforehand. And they said, "Camera's rolling," and they said, "Action," and I said, "Is sound rolling?" They said, "Why?" I said, "Because I'm going to say stuff." And they said, "What are you going to say?" And I said, "You'll see." So I came down the hill going, "Purdy, hey, boy, Purdy." And I'm coming down the hill, and I crawled under the log, and I'm looking ahead, and I say, "Hey, Purdy, you fall down, boy. You fall down. You get up on your dead longs, or I'm going to whomp you. You get up right now, or I'm going to whomp you. Get up." And then I got to his body, and I picked up, and I grabbed his hand. And I said, "Hey, what did they do to you, Purdy? Oh, Purdy, what did they do to you?" And I'm crying and holding his hand, and then I thought, how the hell did I get out of this thing? And, then I finally just put my head back and screamed out, "Ah!" And they used that shot later with Sam Bottoms running away into the distance with my scream behind him. And then when the shot was over, the producer came running up and saying, "You just made this into the greatest movie ever." Well, it wasn't the greatest movie ever, but I got to do improvise all the time, and I didn't bother discussing it. I would just wait until the camera was rolling, like I did on that shot. And I remember they had another thing where they wanted me to say something when we were chasing after one of the good guys, and we're hunters out there in the woods, and they told me to say something. They gave me a line, and I thought, that's a stupid line, so I just yelled out, "I want my hands on his flesh." Yeah. That was, I want my hands on this flash in case you.
It was kind of like in the Charlie's Angel movie with Crispin. They had dialogue written for his character, and he decided not to give him any.
Well, he did go in with a discussion with them, and he told them that he thought he could do more with the character as a character who was totally silent all the thing. And the director got in on that, and then that film, I was supposed to do a role, and I didn't realize that my agent had screwed it up. And I thought that he turned down the role, what I was doing, and that director was a good director, and I should have done the role. And anyways, one of the dumb things that happens sometimes, you're working with people who do dumb things, and you're apologizing to people for something that you didn't do. But anyone who hears this who was connected with them, which I doubt, I apologize for not doing that part in that movie. But yeah, Crispin did it without dialogue, and he created a terrific character, and it's amazing in the film.
Did you get Crispin into acting, or did he decide to do it on his own?
Well, a combination. We just had a long conversation a little while ago about his getting into acting and stuff. His mother did plays and stuff that she at the school that he was going to for gifted children, and she started producing plays and giving him parts in it. But she took him to auditions. I would take him to movie sets, partially because when an actor's life is you're going through all kinds of stuff. I was a Broadway actor. I did 100 plays. I did summer stock repertory, and I did 16 Broadway and off-Broadway plays. And you're struggling. Luckily, back in those days in New York, you have rent control, and thank God for that you're surviving stuff. And I was doing lots of things like that, but then when I got a chance then it started slowing down, and you had to come out to California, and I got a part in a play at the Music Center, and they had actually given me the part. Then they took it away, saying they had a star actor for it, and then the star actor quit, and then I got the part back again. So I did a play called The Sorrows of Frederick, about Frederick the Great, and I had 2 parts in it. And it was going to go back to New York, and it was going to be the biggest money I'd made on Broadway. And I had a good deal with the thing, and I was like 3 months in California, living in Santa Monica, doing this play. And Crispin was just a little kid in those days, and I don't even think we ever even brought him to see a production of the play. He was just like, I don't know, 2-3 years old. Anyway, the part, then they decided that they didn't know the date when it would open on Broadway. So my agent said, stay in L.A., and my wife had to go back to New York because she signed him up for preschool at a thing in New York City. So she left for New York, and I was here and picking up a few roles in television and stuff like that. And there was nothing to do in New York except wait for that play to be opened. And one of the things I did was a Rat Patrol. And in Rat Patrol, I got shot. I got killed. Well, in those days, we had so little money. I was paying 2 rents, one in Santa Monica and one in New York, and we could only afford 1 phone call a week. And it sounds absurd, actually. Everyone's got cell phones now, but 1 call a week. And then I would call, and my son would get on the phone. He said, "Daddy, when are you coming? You could get on a plane." And I said, "What planes are?" And then he'd come up with the next call. you could get on a train and a bus, and he was always trying to get me to come back to New York. And then he saw me get killed on television, and he wasn't sure it was me the next time. And then I got back. Then when I decided, then we were told they're not going to open it on Broadway. So that was it for me. The hell with Broadway. You know, I was in New York for 12 years, which was great. But it's time to make the move, and I put a down payment on a house and got a terrific house deal because I was smart enough to realize that these people needed to sell their house, and I bought it cheaply, incredibly. I won't even tell you how much I paid. It's absurd. I still own that house, and I rent it out now and live in another house. But when I got to New York, Crispin saw me, and I would take him to Riverside Park, and we'd do sledding in the park and stuff. But for a while, he wasn't sure it was me. His daddy was really alive. And then when we got back to, we were living now in Marina Del Rey area, which was great. And one point I remember saying, well, I've got a film in we're going to be shooting in Tennessee, and my boy said, Daddy, when they're shooting, will they be shooting near you? And then I realized that he thought that there was real shooting going to go on, and he was going to get his daddy killed again. And I had to explain to him the terms and what a camera was and all that stuff. That's when I started taking him to sets so I could explain to him what was going on and things like that. So I would carry him onto a set. If I had a day off, I would bring him down to the set on a day I wasn't shooting. And so I would bring him to stuff so that he could understand it. Now, he had, he was, there were, his mother took him to casting calls and stuff like that. She pushed him a little towards it. I just talked to him about acting a little bit, but not only. Later on, when he did a series where he had the lead, and Nick Cage was in the thing, and Nick and he became friends. Time I talked about acting with Nick would be sitting at a table with us, and he would ask me a question about Century or something like that, and I would be telling it to Nick, and back when they were like 15, 16 years old, and don't tell Nick I told that story. He'd be mad at me. Anyway.
Hopefully he doesn't watch the video.
Well, maybe he will. Yeah, so. But now, terrific. I love Nick. He was terrific kid and terrific friend to Crispin and a terrific actor. So, forgive me, Nick. I'm sorry I told that story. That you actually listened to me at one point, but I know you knew it all. So anyway, but Crispin did that thing the best of times, and he was discovering himself, which in a lot of ways an actor has to be, discovering what you're doing and having doubts about what you're doing or understanding what you're doing, and then going in with instinctual things of what you're doing. I remember the first play that I was in where, that director in the college play, I remember there were other actors around, and some of the actors, like me, had really saw acting by looking at movies. I thought good acting was, when you look like a movie actor. And then there were actors that were stagey and overacting. Remember, like, there was this one actor I had a scene with in his first play, and I said, I pulled him aside, I said, have you ever thought of, like, looking at me? And he went, huh? I said, like looking at me and listening to me when I'm talking. And he went, huh? I said, listen to me when I'm talking and try to understand what I'm saying and try to make me understand when you say your lines and look and see if I'm understanding. Well, I was giving an acting lesson. I'd never had an acting lesson. That was an acting lesson. That's how simple acting is in certain ways. Try to understand what the other actor is saying. Try to see if they're understanding it. See what the other person is doing. Try to understand what they're doing. That's like real life. It's called experiencing. Well, if I title my approach to teaching acting, it's experiential acting. If you're not having an experience when you're acting, you're just acting, phony acting. Screw you. That's dumb. Don't act. Be real. Live. Become the character. If you look at me on imdb.com, and please, everyone do, go look at imdb.com and look up my name and see a demo that's, maybe 20 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever it is, 15 minutes, whatever it is. There's a lot of different characters in it. And you see that every character I play is an entirely different character. That's what I do. I don't act the part. I become the character and react to whatever comes at me. And that's what I believe acting is. There are actors that are always the same person every time. Harrison Ford is always Harrison Ford, but he's a terrific actor. But that's partly this style of becoming a star, really. You're better off, you're more likely to become a star if you are the same every time you work. The same personality. Cary Grant was always Cary Grant, and you loved him, and it's great. But there were other people who have more fun with this kind of crazy stuff, and Barbra Streisand is always Barbra Streisand, but she's hilarious. She does messy, crazy things. There are all kinds of, every individual has to find their own way of doing stuff, and the doing is up to you. How do you find out how to do that? Chris Walken was in a play that I was understudy for Robert Preston that was going to be on Broadway, and was one of my Broadway plays. But I didn't have a part in it. I was just Robert Preston's understudy, and then the actor who was going to be playing Richard the Lionheart. And so I was there on the set with. On the stage with the director, the producer, the writer, and they were watching the actors, and I could hear them cutting lines and doing something, and they just fired a girl and replaced her, and now their next doubt was about Christopher Walken, and they were questioning whether they should fire him. Well, I could see immediately how terrific a talent Christopher Walken was. There was nothing to be taught there. There was just a thing of calming him down and stop worrying about what they thought of him. So I pulled him aside and I said, Chris, let's go on the side here and let's talk a little bit about this. And every time you do a scene, come on over on the side and we'll talk. And I did that for about a week. And he finally said, yeah, I don't think I need to do this anymore. I said, no, I don't think you do. I think you've got it. And he did. He had, all I did, I didn't teach Chris Walken how to act. I just taught him how to respect his own acting and to not worry about these dumbasses that were on the verge of firing him. Just do your thing and ignore them entirely. And he did. And he was voted best newcomer of the year that year. And Chris did pay me a compliment about me helping him his first year in New York. But my help was really just encourage him to realize how great he was. But on contrary to that, Chris Walken had to audition for the Actors Studio 5 times before they let him in. What the hell was Strasberg thinking? Couldn't he see it in a minute? So that the Actors Studio was, a big place that everyone wanted to get to be a member of. Nonsense. There were good actors that got into the Actors Studio who got frozen by the Actors Studio, who didn't do it. There were good actors that, in spite of the Actors Studio, went out and had real careers. All of that kowtowing to Strasberg, who was a lousy actor himself, never really, didn't know anything about acting. What he knew about was trying to do it carefully and safely and doing things that were wrong for the actor. Instead of living the part, he had you creating stuff from your own childhood that would give you the worst moment of your life and replace the actor's worst moment with your worst moment. That's nonsense. Understanding your worst moment is fine if you want to go through it. But when you're doing a character, the character is not having your worst moment when your pet frog got squashed by the ice cream truck. That's not the big moment for the character. You have to recreate the terrible moment of the character. That's what Strasberg had people doing. He called it emotional recall. Well, you look at a lot of studio actors. What they are is, hello, right, okay, I'm a method actor, boo-hoo, that's crap. I'm sorry. There are actors that came out of the Actors Studio who are terrific, in spite of the fact that they actually sometimes went and auditioned for 4 or 5 times. Dustin Hoffman was another one. I was his understudy in a play, and I could see, and it was his first play. He had been, it was his first play, and I could see how talented he was. Not as friendly as Chris Walken, but he was talented. I could see this was. But he had auditioned for the Actors Studio 5 times before they let him in. That's absurd. Great talents have to find somehow that they are. And sometimes they need a friend to point it out. Sometimes, your sweetest girlfriend or, whatever. Somebody is going to straighten you out and tell you, it's there. Well, in a sense, I did that myself. I became there by myself. And before I even got to Northwestern, I had already done 10 plays. I'd done junior college thing in that first play, and then I did neighborhood play groups, and these people were the most Hollywood I was ever. They were like really pompous and self-important about how great they were as actors, and you really had to bow down to them.
I've actually.
Go ahead.
It's been an honor to have you on and to have you on my channel. I really appreciate it.
Well, fun. If they want to get in touch with me, they should contact you and get my phone number from you.
Yes, sir. I'll send them to you.
All right. It's been fun. Thanks for putting up with me.
You've been fantastic. Thank you.
You betcha.
You have a good night.